Alright, let's begin. So, yesterday I came all the way to right before countdown. So, again, a tuple is a constant. This can't be changed. It's kind of like a list that stores exactly, I think it stores exactly 3 things. Could be wrong. Let me look that up. Tuple, computer science. Tuple is a data structure that is immutable, unchangeable, ordered. So I think I'm wrong about it only holding 3 things. Yeah, I'm wrong. I don't like tuples. They're can be very efficient. Well, a tuple is like a list that's constant. Once you create this object, you cannot change it. It's useful in the fact that so remember I said how a list works is you have to allocate an array of bits in RAM, and you then assign it. So you have like this array or boxes in RAM, and you assign the different things. You have pointers to the first object. Uh, it can be quite slow. This speeds it up tremendously, and Python is a language that isn't compiled. So this would speed up the processing significantly of our list. But you're unable to come in and change it. So anytime you have like a constant list, you can make it a tuple. If you're not going to be changing or doing anything fancy with the list. Some functions, such as this function, require, I believe that it requires that font be past a tuple and not a list. So you wouldn't be able to pass a list, you'd have to make it a tuple. I could be wrong on that, you'd have to look it up. And we saw that whenever you created and write, so you can make turtles write to the screen. However, whenever time you write, you should clear it first, so that the previous message is erased. So clear is used to clear when any text the turtle is written, kind of like an eraser. And again, document any struggles you have. I think I added that to the requirement. All right, countdown timer. Just write that. Having a score is half the fun of a game. Clicking a turtle and accumulating points will not be as fun if you have all the time in the world. A 30-second countdown timer will fix this. Like with the turtle click, in order to have a countdown for the catch a game, turtle. Okay. I didn't know that this morning. Well, I called over to Miss Angie and like because he's like, let me turn this off. See my boy. Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. All right. So a 30-second countdown timer will fix this, like with the turtle click. In order to have a countdown for a catch a turtle, you need to use an event. So this is very common method of creating a timer in in games or in any applications. So let's look at the code. So we have our font set up. This is a tuple. Tuple uses parentheses, so you can't change this font afterward. You can create a new font and change it like that. So you can create a new tuple, but you can't change this variable. This variable is constant. Timer value equal 5. Countdown interval equals 1,000. The number 1,000 represents 1 second. And a variable indicating whether or not the timer is up. We set it false because at the start of the game we want it to be running. We create a new turtle called counter and a function called countdown. Note we need to tell this function that timer and timer up are global variables. This is where I was saying earlier it's somewhat weird because look at counter. Counter is a global variable, isn't it? Why doesn't counter appear in the list of globals? I don't know the precise reason because I'm not an expert in Python. Add countdown right here. But why? This is a function. So here I create a value timer and timer up. This function needs to know that these are global variables. Why isn't counter among the global variables? Isn't it a global variable? That is the reason. So I'm not entirely sure. But I believe that what? Oh, but is this so objects are variables? So a variable is just a name you call something. You can store objects to variables. You can store integers to variables. Variables just refer to the name. But what I think is, so when you create an object, you're not really creating. When you save an object to a variable, you're not really saving the entire. You're not really saving the entire object to that variable. So let me come in and explain some high-level stuff. Okay, so you can think of RAM or the memory of a computer as an array of binary numbers, right? So, for example, the number 2 would be written as 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0. So that's the binary representation for the number 2. Now, a variable, you can store in a variable this number 2. So if you want to store number 2, you can store it into a variable. Or you can store a pointer object that points to the to this point in memory. So you can give it so that this variable stores a pointer that just points to this, so that when you use this variable, so this period right here, this period tells the computer that this counter is a pointer, and this period says go to that location in memory that counter is pointing to. And I believe it, from the looks of it, again, I'm not entirely an expert. It looks like counter doesn't have to be declared as a global variable. Again, best debugging practices to figure it out is to test it both ways. If it works, it works. In this case, I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to count off if you put counter as a global, but let's see if it runs. So here we can see this timer is counting down, and then it pops up time up. Let's see what happens if I put counter as a global, if it gives me an error. No, it runs perfectly fine. So to be on the safe side, you can put counter as a global. It looks like it's unnecessary because it is an object. But anyway, so this countdown function, if timer is less than or equal to 0, so again, remember we set timer to be 5. Write times up with the font set up, and then we set timer to true. Else, write the timer with the current time. So remember, it starts with 5, and then we de-increment it by 1, so it'll become 4. And look what it does here. Here, it calls, so it goes to the counter, it gets the screen, and then it tells it on timer, call this function again. So in the function countdown, it resets up at the event handler to call countdown again. This counter interval is in milliseconds. Milli means 1,000. So, passing in 1,000 says every 1,000 milliseconds, call countdown. And here inside a countdown, we tell it every, again, in 1,000 milliseconds, call countdown again. Does that make sense? So what this is doing is, so again, this is a function. It's not going to execute it right now. Let's go get down here. And on timer, so you get the screen, and you're going to call countdown at 1,000 milliseconds. 1,000 milliseconds later, or 1 second later, it's going to execute this. It's going to clear the text. If it's less than or equal to 0, it's going to put times up and set timer to true and stop. Else is going to write the current time, reduce timer by 1, and then is going to go get the screen the counter's on. So it gets this. This is another way of accessing the screen. And then it's going to add another timer to be executed in 1,000 milliseconds, or 1 second. So copy the, and you can see it executing here. So every 1,000 milliseconds, or 1 second, is going to update timer. And then when it's done, so let me add some debugging printing statements. So print in timer. So it's in the timer, in timer, in timer, in timer, in timer. Time's up. And now it does, this function no longer executes anymore. So what timer does is basically it's going to it says execute this function in this many milliseconds. And you have to keep doing it over and over again. So as you did before, score writer, add the code to move counter to the location identified in your notebook. Does counter move to the location you expected? If not, make corrections. Copy the countdown function and add it to the game function. Copy on timer event. To save yourself time while testing, change the timer variable from 30 seconds to just 5 seconds. So when you have something like a game like this, you really want some of the events to happen a whole lot quicker. Like when you were doing your painting, you may want it to increase change the speed over the entire program. You want the beginning stuff to happen really fast, and you want the stuff you're currently working on to be very slow so you can see any errors that occur. So when you're testing this, I would recommend using 5 seconds. But remember, the requirement is 30 seconds, so make sure you change it back to 30 seconds when you're done. Notice the timer runs out, but the game still continues to run. This is because the game is not checking if the timer runs out. You copied a variable called timer up into your code. And the countdown function timer up will change to true once the timer runs out. Now all you have to do is set up an if statement that checks the timer up. So when the timer is up, we change the variable to indicate that the timer is up. We can use this variable because it's global anywhere else. So in your other functions, you can add in, and we call variables like this flags, because they're usually a Boolean flag. They're either true or false. We set this flag to true to indicate that the game's up. Later in your spot click or wherever you named it function, so get global timer. Again, this timer is meant to be the flag. And if the flag is not done, update the score and change the position. Otherwise, whenever you click the spot, hide the turtle. So you can see if timer is done, hide the turtle, and it's the same thing. You can have if timer is done, hide turtle. Otherwise, update score. It works either way. So you can always reverse which order if statements are executed. I know you can't always do it. Like for the grades example. No, you could have it if timer is done. Usually, though, for readability, what you usually do is have the primary function first. It doesn't really matter in this case. You could have it either way. Both of them make sense for readability. If you can read the code and just looking at the code and be like, oh, I understand completely, I think anyone else looking at this code will understand what it does. So if you put if timer is done, hide turtle. Otherwise, update the score and change position. So after that, you have a working game. Once you complete this setup, you should have a working game. So let's talk about it's your turn. So we can customize this to make it more your own. You can add a color to the background. So in your screen object or window object, you can change background color. So add colors to the game. We can add different shapes. So let's say we want to have a colorful background. You can stamp different colors all the way around. So you use to add an print a turtle on its current position, just like a stamp. Define colors variable to have a list of colors. Define a function to add color. Change the color of the shape and use the stamp function to leave a mark behind. Use random choice, so you can do ran.choice to choose a random color to get random color from the list you created. Change the color of the shape back to its original color. So make sure, and then this function. So if you have a list called colors, and you can do ran.choice, and it'll choose a random color for that list. You can also change a shrinking shape. So change the size of the shape each time it's clicked. So define a list of sizes. The smallest size recommended for a shape is 0.5. Define function for changing the size of the shape, and change the size of the shape using ran.choice. choice.sizes. So basically, every time a new spot or wherever your shape you decided, make them random, so that's not have like a big circle, medium circle, small circle, and just so that they're not always the same size. Create a function called start game that starts the game. That's what I was just about to say. Here, what I would do, or what I would like, is for you guys to add this to it. Add either a square, a circle, or something at the very beginning, so that when you first launch the game, it's not immediately playing. And what you want to do is when you click this start button, to create like a start button, when you click it, what would happen is this is going to clear and the game begins. Does that make sense? Are you confused on anything? So what you want is, we don't want it to start with one. We want it so that when you click that spot, we create another one. That's just a start button. So that it doesn't begin when when you first click it. Let's see if I can show you an example. Alright, so here is the game. Here's a game without its your turn section. So notice it already began counting. I wasn't ready yet. Now I click it, and it begins. Notice that the countdown timer is already done. And these are all the same sizes. And then it allowed me to click the last one. And it disappears and no longer does. So that's what it should look like before you get to your turn. I will say this: you can. So if you don't want to add a different button, if you just want to make it so it starts after your first spot is clicked, you can do that too. So you're right. If you want it just to begin as soon as I click the first spot, it's all right too. So this is what I was meaning by stamp. is that it's leaving the turtle behind. And notice they're varying sizes and colors. And leaving behind an old image. So if you wanted to, so it says here, add colors to the game by stamping turtles on the background using the list. Define a colors. So here, what they did was make it so that they imprint the turtle at its current position using stamp, so that you can see where all the old turtles were and count them, kind of. And then change it back to before you stamp the original color. That was one solution. I thought though, let me read. Okay, so what they're doing instead, let me run it. What they had instead is that it's black that you should be hitting and then leaving a colored one. I don't like that. I'm going to modify this. What do you think? Do you think it should leave behind the turtle or it should remove it? Do you, it looks ugly, doesn't it? Notice this is wrong, by the way. The official solution is, so the timer's already started. You should have, the timer shouldn't start until you click it. So this official solution is wrong. But you see how it's stamping over and over? It looks ugly, doesn't it? I'm gonna say do it. But here's the thing. What I want, let me actually modify the official solution. So, start button equal turtle dot hacking together a solution very quickly. What are they doing? Alright, so I went with default everything. This should work. So instead of default shape, give something else. Then when you click it, it begins. And have it match the background color so that it looks deactivated. That looks better, doesn't it? Now have it so that you're clicking a new color. Like this. Makes the game slightly harder because you're looking for... I can't see it. Oh, time's up. And this is also broken, the official solution, because it has the first one start in the middle. That should be random too. The first location should be random. So change the background color and just set these to match the background color. And then you can do choice from the color list. So any questions? No, there'll be numbers. Quotation marks are only for strings. I need to change that. I had it due today. I'll go in and change it right now. So submission is due today. And now it's due tomorrow, Thursday the 1st. So here's the code word. There's the code word. So yeah, it'll be due tomorrow. If you have any questions, email me. Or you can do a comment. So if you if we have a timer flag, we set it equal to some boolean. We can do if timer flag. So I think it's uses time up. Time up. So if time is up, what you'll do is stop, else continue playing. You could also do if not time up, continue playing, else stop. But I didn't know if you knew how to do not. This is the symbol for not. So if not, timer up, meaning if timer is false. Or you could have done this, equal equal false, and equal equal true. But generally, you could leave off the checking if it's true. And if you want to do a shortcut to see if it's false, you can just put if not, time up. You can write it like that. For this, for when you have a simple if or else, it really doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, it really doesn't matter as long as the is opposite in code. It does sometimes matter the order, and that was like in the grade section. Remember when we did grades, when you check to see if it's greater than 90? If you flip the order and check to see if it's greater than 60 or something, it won't work correctly because it will be true in that point. But for a simple check like this, if can either be true or it can be false. And it doesn't matter because there's only two possible values. So order when you have a simple case like this doesn't matter. And we'll say that so your start game function, what should start game do? Let's write some pseudocode for it. Isn't it on the screen? Oh my goodness, have you not been seeing this the whole time? Okay, I moved it back. Diff start game. So what do you want start game to do? So you want it to. So before starting game, what we want to do is hide the spot, show button, show start button, and when the game starts, what do you want to do? You want to hide the start button. You want to show the spot, and then you want to start timer. And over here, you're going to have start button, on click, call start game. What is one thing that's wrong with this right now? Whenever you do dot on click, what does the function on click require? What does this require? What does start game require? So whenever you click, it's going to send the function start game an x and y coordinate. It's not used, but this function does require these coordinates, even though x and y aren't going to be used, it does still require it. I highly recommend not ever using x and y, unless they're for position. In computer science, x and y are usually 2D coordinate points. That's what they mean. I, R, N, R, J, K. So usually we have I, J, and K for loop variables. N can also be used as a number. 2. So if you had a nested loop, 3 for loops, usually you do I, J, and K. And N for that. L, never use because it looks like a 1. But these are usually the starting points. We tend to avoid X, Y, and Z because they are for 3D points. used to represent reading points. So there's no questions. Is there any? The other one? Because it then.